building a DC at Gilt Groupe. Well, joining us to speak about that today is Chris Halkyard, Chief Supply Chain Officer at Gilt Groupe, and Steve Johnson, Principal at Johnson Stevens Consulting. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Russell.
Chris, I guess threshold question should be to you, since you're at Gilt Groupe. What was the challenge that the company was facing?
A little something about Gilt Groupe first. The company was founded back in 2007 as a private sale, invitation-only website that deals with flash sales. So when you're dealing with flash sales, you're making relationships with brands. You're sending out emails out to your customers, and then they're going online at a certain time and shop until we're sold out. And it was a smashing success in 2007 and 2008. So likewise, as our membership continued to increase, business increased, and it was a wonderful, wonderful situation. The issue with the supply chain is it's very tough to scale. We found the facilities that we put in the Northeast, in Brooklyn. We then grew out the Brooklyn facility. We moved into Boston, the Massachusetts facility. Continued to go over capacity as the business continued to expand. So the biggest challenge that we had with Gilt Groupe is to deal with scaling the business. Our membership continues to expand, so the trick about supply chain is to maintain that customer service relationship and to be able to keep an infrastructure in place that can manage the growth of the company, which is why we brought on some help, some engineers, a consulting company like Johnson Stevens.
Steve, I want to turn to you and ask you about your company's role. What were the services that it provided? And I want you to tell us about Gilt Groupe's working relationship with the various parties involved in this project.
Well, Russell, it was an interesting situation because obviously Chris came to us and said, I have to be ready for holiday 2010. And we were faced pretty much, he had come into the company in May of 2010. And so we said, how are we going to do that? The first thing to do, obviously, when we're putting together a distribution center plan is to go through a 5-year growth plan with the company. And in Gilt Groupe's case, every week that preceded each week, was a new peak. And so we were dealing with not a lot of history, but a lot of conjecture, so to speak, as far as how many units we're going to do, how many orders we're going to do, those projections. What we did is we put a plan together with senior management, spearheaded by Chris and his team, and then translated that into things like you need this much square footage or you need these types of material handling equipment systems. What happened in the end is we then took a schedule that would be normally an 18-month schedule and compressed it to 10 months. And the first piece of that was really only 4 months to get them some volume going through that distribution center, which is in Louisville, Kentucky, before holiday 2010. And what we found was there was a combination of material handling systems, a hybrid, so to speak, that we put together for them.
You know, in speaking with you earlier, you used that term, hybrid, when you were talking about the material handling solution that was ultimately developed. You also talked about HyperTrack, which I guess was a reference to a project, being compressed and having to be done quickly. But walk us through that with a little bit more detail, if you will, and talk about the compression of that schedule and what's unique about the material handling solution.
Well, the HyperTrack schedule that we were dealing with, as I mentioned there, is we had to get something going for holiday 2010, but at the same time we had to spend the appropriate amount of planning time in getting this thing put together. So what we found is the first part of the schedule we don't really compress because the planning has to be done right, or you won't get the right thing when you build the facility. You won't have the right capacity, you won't have the right equipment in place. We then had to work with an integration team, APCO Automation, to really make the building come together quickly and in lockstep really pull in the right players and the right equipment and get that installed and implemented. So the HyperTrack part of the schedule was really that part of the late summer and then into the fall and then into the winter to fully get them in the facility after through holiday 2010, but into the early part of 2011. The hybrid system was really a combination of material handling systems, and there's a couple ways you can do fulfillment. And what we found is the best solution for them through looking at after-tax internal rate of return calculations and ROIs was to use a solution with some of the equipment that they had previously, which is mobile robotic equipment, along with what we call PIC modules, which is using the full cube of the building. It also enabled us to, through those PIC modules, put all of their SKUs, their items, over 100,000 items, in a pick face, so that eventually all of those could be picked at any given time. It's the first time they were ever able to really do that, accomplish that.
Chris, final question to you. I guess we've established what the challenge was that Gilt Groupe was facing. Steve has walked us through the solution, rather inventive solution that was developed there. Question to you, results. What are the benefits that have flowed as a result of this project?
The immediate benefit that we saw was we were able to scale the business. Supply chain was no longer the bottleneck. We were able to get orders out much quicker than we were before. And we were very pleased with that. And the results that we're referring to now was after we moved into the Louisville facility in calendar 2011. So now that we've reached all of those benchmarks and we're hitting a 99.9% fill rate, damage rate's very, very low, error rate is very low, and our inventory accuracy is virtually perfect, it opens up new opportunities now because we did design the building for future scale, above and beyond the few years. We have some Eastern European design in the facility, so we're able to scale on top and go vertical and use more of the cube for our outbound pack stations and manifestations. Should anything else come around, a really effective supply chain will never stop or prohibit the buying from happening. There should never be a need to say, well, I don't think the DC can get the product out. We've overcome those obstacles, and now we're able to look at the supply chain a couple years down the road instead of what are we going to do a couple weeks from now. Which puts us in a very good position right now to continue to grow Gilt Groupe and continue to achieve these best in industry metrics. So overall, we're very, very pleased. The organization is very pleased with how the project ended.
I would think you would be. Those are some very impressive numbers that you just gave us. Gentlemen, I want to thank both of you and tell you how much we appreciate your taking time out of your busy day to meet with us.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
That's Chris Halkyard, Gilt Groupe, Steve Johnson, Johnson Stevens Consulting, speaking with us today about building a DC at Gilt Groupe. Thank you for watching.